All right, it's week 2 best bets on ProFootballTalk.com. Last week, MDS went 2-1. I was 1-1. These are picks against the spread, our best 3. I guess I got to do better than I did last week. That's for damn sure. This week, we're going to pick 3 games. I go first this week. MDS goes first in the odd-numbered week. So for me, we're going to start this off with a team that seems to be falling apart and is throwing a rookie quarterback to the wolves. I'm not taking the Bills. I'm taking the team that is playing the Bills, the San Diego Chargers, otherwise known as the Los Angeles Chargers, minus 7.5. I think this one is going to be ugly in Western New York. Josh Allen was put in mothballs last week for a reason. They wanted to protect him. This week they have no choice. They can't put Nathan Peterman back on the field against a Chargers team that picked him off 5 times in one half last year. I like the Chargers, who probably feeling salty about their inability to stay close enough to the Chiefs last week, wanting to avoid a slow start to the season. They are going to go into Buffalo loaded for bear. Anthony Lynn, a guy that was coached on that staff and maybe feels like he should have been considered for a head coaching job there. I think he's going to have extra motivation to get his team ready to go and go in there and blow the Bills off the field. MDS.
Yeah, and that's not a bad strategy for making your best bet, is find a team you don't believe in and just pick whoever they're playing. And, the last couple of years, people made a lot of money betting against the Browns. The Browns were a bad team, both straight up and against the spread. And the Bills may be the same this year. They may keep losing by significant margins in week 1. So I can't pick against the Bills, unfortunately, but I can pick a team that I have quite a bit of confidence in from week 1, and that's the Chiefs getting 4 points against the Steelers. And I really like the fact that I can take a team that looked real good in week 1 and get points with them. It was actually Chiefs were getting 5 when I first looked at the spread. It's down to 4 now because a lot of people are thinking like I am and taking the Chiefs. But I loved what Patrick Mahomes did. I loved what Tyreek Hill did. And I like the Chiefs. If they don't win outright, which I think they've got a pretty good chance of winning, I definitely think it'll at least be a very close game.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that one. The Chiefs looked great on Sunday at L.A. Now, it felt like a Chiefs home game when you saw all the red in the stands, but Patrick Mahomes, a special talent. I just at home, there's something about the Steelers that makes it very hard to pick the upset, to pick the underdog, and it happens. It's not like they win every game at home, but I feel like this early in the season home opener, it's going to be tough to overcome the Steelers, so I decided to stay away from that one. That one wasn't on my list, so I don't feel bad that you took one I was going to take. Now, last week, you took one that I thought taking the other side of would make sense, and I didn't. You saw the Buccaneers playing the Saints tough, and I got to give it to you. The Buccaneers win it outright. You had the Buccaneers plus the big margin they were getting. This week with the Browns rolling into New Orleans, and I don't want to be anyone going to New Orleans this week, not after what happened last week. I think that Sean Payton is going to have these guys ready, and you throw on top of it the reunion with Greg Williams, the guy who single-handedly cost Sean Payton $7-8 million 6 years ago, the last time Sean Payton got a chance to go against his former defensive coordinator, the guy who was the mastermind of the bounty scandal. 49-21 was the final score, and the Saints weren't even very good the year that happened. So the Saints giving 9 to the Browns, that's a lock this week. I think the Saints are going to roll the Browns. Meanwhile, the Browns are just happy they're not on track to go 0-16. I think that even they know this week is going to be a tough one. And until they put Baker Mayfield in at quarterback, I think it's going to be harder and harder for the Browns to be the contender that maybe their defense would justify them being.
Yeah, and, the Saints better win because if they were to lose to the Browns, they would now be 0-2, 0-2 at home, and 0-2 in the 2 games that, on paper before the season looked like maybe the 2 easiest games on their schedule all year. So, if the Saints are going to be playoff contenders, as they certainly think they are, they're about the last team that can afford to start 0-2, given how their schedule looks. So, yeah, I tend to agree with you. That was not one that I was going to pick, but I tend to agree with you that the Saints ought to bounce back. So you've now picked 2 favorites to cover, and I'm going to pick my second consecutive underdog. I like the Seahawks getting 3.5 against the Bears. Now, I would say the Bears overall looked more impressive in week 1 than the Seahawks did until that late meltdown against the Packers. Anyway, the Bears looked impressive. But I just have a feeling that the Bears are going to be reeling a little bit from the way that meltdown went, and that the Seahawks might be a team that can turn things around a little bit faster than people are expecting. I mean, Seattle is a very different team. They completely revamped their defense over the offseason, got rid of the older, more expensive players, went younger. But I actually think the Seahawks might be, after so many years of being near the top of the league, took a step back last year. I think they now might be a better team than a lot of people are getting them credit for, and probably a better team than the Bears. And so I like getting 3.5 points when they take on the Bears on Monday night.
Yeah, and I like that pick a lot, and that was one of the ones on my list of potential selections. Primetime game, the Seahawks are used to those types of platforms, and they played the Broncos very, very tough. The Broncos' defense was a little bit too dominant for the Seahawks to erase a deficit in the final quarter. They had 3 chances, a couple of sacks, ended drives, an interception at the tail end of the game, which was really a wing and a prayer that wasn't even close to getting the Seahawks in position to win the game. But I think against a Bears team that is dealing with a serious mental wound after what happened on Sunday night, in Green Bay, I think that sets the stage for the Seahawks. So I agree with you on that one. All right, I feel like you're daring me to take an underdog, and I have an underdog on my list. But the more I think about this one, the better I feel about the Texans going into Nashville. Giving 2.5, the road favorite. But when you look at what the Titans went through last weekend in Miami, that 7-hour marathon, injuries to Delaney Walker, and also the status of Marcus Mariota, and even if he can play, and the indications are that he will play, he's got an elbow and a shoulder problem, he just doesn't seem to have the build that is going to allow him to withstand the pounding of being an NFL quarterback, especially if he's going to be even remotely mobile as a quarterback. So the Texans still have all their key players healthy, which I think is a big deal after 1 week. The Texans, I think, gave the Patriots, I thought they were going to win. They gave the Patriots a good enough game that makes me still believe in the Texans. We're not going to write them off just because they didn't go to New England and win. I think they do go to Nashville and win by more than 2.5 points and kind of set the tone for the kind of team we're going to be seeing from the Texans all year long.
Yeah, and I agree with you about that pick. I like the Texans this week as well, and I like them to win pretty comfortably, certainly by more than a field goal, so I think they should cover, and I think that's a good pick that you made. My last pick is also going to be a favorite, and I'm kind of following in the same mold that you went in with your first pick, where I'm picking against the team. The team I'm picking against is the Detroit Lions. I'm picking the 49ers -6 at home, and I just felt like as I watched the Lions on Monday night, I just felt like Matt Patricia's defense and the players playing on Matt Patricia's defense are not on the same page. It just didn't look right. They had the pick six on the very first play of the game, and then after that, it just looked like a mess. They looked sloppy and disorganized, and I don't know how much you should blame Matt Patricia, how much you should blame the players, but the fact is I think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to bounce back from a tough game against a tough Minnesota defense, and I think he's going to put a lot of points on the board against a much less tough Detroit Lions defense. So I like the 49ers -6, and I think that's possibly a second straight blowout for Matt Patricia to start his career in Detroit, and I don't know that any coach is ever on the hot seat after 2 games. But I do think that it's going to be real tough for the Lions to face those questions of, you fired Jim Caldwell after 9-7 the last 2 years. What are you doing now with Matt Patricia after an 0-2 start, which is where I think the Lions are going to be after the 49ers beat them big.
Once the walls caved in on the Lions on Monday night, did you notice anything about Patricia's demeanor on the sideline? And he's a guy who has a much different image than the reality. We enjoyed interviewing him at the scouting combine. I had a chance to spend a little time with him before the interview, and he comes off much different than that big scraggly beard and the hat turned backwards, and I just seemed like he just was disconnected from the team in the second half, and I just don't know how this one's going to go. So you may be onto something, but did you detect that sense in his demeanor that I did?
I absolutely did. ESPN caught him on the sideline looking, I thought, kind of confused and kind of unclear on what was happening right in front of him. And, I don't want to judge too much of a coach's body language or facial expression in the 2 seconds that he's on TV, but I thought he kind of just looked dumb. And you're right, he doesn't come across as dumb when you see him in interviews, talk to him, look at his press conferences, and people who know his background say he's a very intelligent man. But boy, he did not look the part of a head coach. He often doesn't look the part of a head coach. I'm not going to judge a man because he has a beard or because he wears a Roger Goodell clown T-shirt, but he doesn't really have the cool demeanor on the sideline that you want in a head coach, or at least he didn't appear to in his first game as a head coach. And that's going to be real interesting to follow. I think, like I said, I don't want to overreact. He's not going to be on the hot seat after 2 games, but I think he is one of the new coaches who you could picture the wheels falling off pretty fast. I mean, he inherited a 9-7 team with a franchise quarterback they're paying a lot of money to. I think they expect him to be able to win fast. They don't expect him to go 2-14 and do a total rebuild. So I think it's really one that bears watching if the Lions get blown out for a second straight week, as I think they're going to.
Yeah, and you may be on the money with that. And they're really, I don't want to be overly superficial about what a coach looks like and how he carries himself, but my God, that's what we all look at. Think about guys like Tom Landry, and you can't look like an unmade bed and be an effective NFL head coach. And I'm not saying Matt Patricia is at that level, but there just was something there, and I think it is a disconnect from who he really is, and I think he needs to get an image that he projects that is closer to who he really is as a coach and as a person, because it just doesn't come off. Now that he's the guy who's front and center all the time, it doesn't come off maybe the way that he would want it to. All right, that's it for this week. This one doesn't count, but I like the Dolphins getting 3 against the Jets. I really like this one. I almost made it one of my picks. You almost shamed me into picking an underdog, and I was so close to doing it. But you have any others that you got on the shelf that didn't make the final cut?
Well, I'll just say I reiterate your pick of Texans -2.5. That's the one. If you and I could agree on one, I would have agreed with you on that one. We are not going to ever take the same team, so I'm not taking Texans -2.5, but I really like that pick as well. If the two of us were kind of jointly each throwing $50 in on a $100 bet on a team, I think we could agree to jointly throw in on the Texans.
All right. Well, hey, MDS, great as always, and we will do this again next week, and hopefully next week I'll be able to say I had a better week than you did. Also, all of our picks are going to be available at profootballtalk.com. Straight up, not against the spread, but you can apply the spread if you like. Thanks as always for your time, and we'll do this again next week.
Okay, good talking to you, Mike.